Okay, chapter 7, Siku, the pack ice. And I realized they do have some words. I wish they would tell you that at the beginning of the book. They do have some of the words in the back, how to pronounce them. So like Siku, S-I-K-U, is pronounced Siku. So it does have some of the words down there. There were no watches at Vincent Olagok's second whale camp. The wind that blew for a day came out of the southwest and closed the last leads between Wainwright and Barrow. Only part of the whale puddle remained open. The tent was set up behind the ship-shaped glacier, but the umiak remained on its sled, waiting for the north wind to open the leads and let the whalers chase the whales who were now locked off from them, swimming under the ice. A pinochle game was in progress inside the warm tent. Little Owl offered Lincoln a cup of coffee, then sat down beside him. Ever since the incident with the tampered snow machine, Little Owl had been looking at him with shy smiles and talking pleasantly with him. Nothing could have pleased Lincoln more. Bertha flipped on the CB and called her office. Roy turned back when the storm hit, a woman said. Over. Send him right out here, before it's too late. Over. Vincent put down his cards and looked at Bertha. I do not like it, he said. I do not like Roy here. This is a whale camp. We must save our young people, Bertha snapped. What better place than whale camp, where tradition is strong? We must have young people who are quick in whale camp, Vincent replied angrily, not drugged ones. He needs you, Bertha said, raising her voice. Help him. Ah, said Vincent, shaking his head. We argue. We need a whale to bind us. We need the spirit of the whale in our hearts, Bertha. We need the spirit of the whale in our hearts, she said. Let Roy come. I think, said Utik in a booming voice, that it is time I catch some big fish, big fresh tomcods and some crabs so we have something nice to celebrate. He picked up a fishing line and a long-handled ice cutter and went out to the tent. Little Owl busied herself sweeping the plywood floor. Lincoln Noah, said Cusick, also eager, and I actually looked up what Cusick is, and it's supposed to be Cusick. So I'm pretty close. Cusick. Lincoln Noah, said Cusick, also eager to leave the uncomfortable scene between Bertha and Vincent. Come outside. I show you how to do the seal for Nalikatak. Lincoln gladly followed. How to do the seal for Nalikatak. I don't know what that is. Let's see. Nalikatak. A whale festival. Oh, that was the seal walk. Remember that? Lincoln gladly followed. Out on the ice, Utik was standing patiently over a hole not far from the glacier. Come, Agviq, he sang in Inuit. Now, they do have that word in there, too. Inupiat, that I was telling you I wanted to try to figure out how to pronounce. And it's Inupiat. Inupiat. And Agviq is actually Agvik. Agvik is actually how you pronounce it. I wish I would have done this in the beginning, right? It would have been nice. It's actually something I always think about when you're reading a book. Look in the front, look in the back, see if there's any little things like that. And I often forget to do that. Come, Agvik, he sang in Inupiat. Come, great Nukik, bring peace to us. Little Owl heard and wished for a whale to happen to them. The pinochle game, which had stopped while the Olagoks argued, resumed without Vincent. Waldo took his place, but the game quickly broke up. Tig-Luke cheated, and Waldo ran him outside. Laughing uproariously, Tig-Luke sat down on a sled and took out his bone carving. His father put down a whale knife he was sharpening and walked over to him. Tig-Luke, you are no good. Why do I have a son like you? Tig-Luke hunkered down and said nothing. Your brother Frank is not like this. He studies and works hard. He wins honors. He makes me proud. You make only trouble for me. Tig-Luke had heard this so many times, he simply clenched his jaws together and tightened his parka hood so he could not hear. He stared resentfully at Cusick and Lincoln, two good boys like his brother, and wished he had a six-pack of beer. Your hands are too far forward, Cusick said to Lincoln, who shifted them. Good, now keep your legs straight, lift and walk. With great effort, Lincoln inched his legs and toes off the ice, wobbled, and fell back. You got the idea, said Cusick. Now practice. The one who stays up the longest and walks the farthest wins. Time me. He took off his wristwatch and handed it to Lincoln. It was a jogger's digital watch. This looks like an invader from another planet, Lincoln chided. Does it have a restaurant on it? It's got everything else. Cusick laughed and got down on his belly. He placed his fists under his hips, arranged and rearranged them, then pressed and lifted his legs. Count. Even with his boots on, he raised his feet high off the ice, and waddling from side to side like a seal, began to walk. He did indeed look like Nachiku the seal. 28 seconds, 29 seconds. Cusick grunted and came down to measure the distance. 29 seconds. Wow, strong boy, all right, Lincoln said. Cusick rolled onto his back and smiled at Lincoln's words. You Eskimo, all right, he said. Lincoln was surprised how good those words made him feel. There was something secure and strong in the Eskimo personality, and the longer he lived with them, the more he wished to be one, not just in blood, but in deeds and spirit. Your turn to do the seal, Cusick said. Lincoln was just about to lift his feet when Little Owl stepped out of the tent and tossed out the dishwater. It went up in the sub-zero air as hot water and hit the ground as ice. Lincoln stared at the crystal balls bouncing toward him. Diamonds for you, Lincoln Noah, she called happily, and came over to watch the workout. I forgot how cold it is out here in my warm clothes, Lincoln said, until you all do something like that. He rearranged his hands. Little Owl, he looked up at her. You can do the seal? Last year I could, she said as she scrubbed the pan with the snow. This year I cannot. She patted her hips. I've changed into a woman. My weight is in the wrong place. Lincoln thought that was very nice and stared happily at the pale blue ice under his nose. Taking off a mitten, he thoughtfully stroked the fuzz on his upper lip, wondering if the time had come for him to shave. What are you stalling for? Cusick asked. He knew perfectly well that Little Owl was the reason and felt a twinge of jealousy. Until this moment, Lincoln had been the almost holy boy to whom the whale was coming. But Cusick decided here and now he did not have to like everything about him. I'm going to practice my lance throw if you do not stop stalling around, he snapped. I have better things to do. Stalling, Lincoln said. Me? Stalling? Guess I am. With warm thoughts of Little Owl powering his arms and legs, he lifted his feet. 4 seconds later, he thumped back onto the ice. He lifted them again, felt his muscles strain, then his body, then his legs, face, crooked nose collapsed onto the ice. He breathed ice crystals, but he had not done badly. Hey, he said to himself, with Little Owl for inspiration, I just might get good enough to enter the seal walk contest at the Whale Festival. What is it called? Nalukatak? Vincent came out of the tent, frowning and looking miserable. He did not want Roy in the camp, but he also did not want to fight with Bertha. Quietly, he checked the sleds and the tent ropes. Airbell, Raven! Seeing where my dogs are. Here they come. He retied a paddle in the icebound Umiak, and after blowing his nose, he wiped his eyes. When he could find nothing else to do, he climbed the pale green iceberg until he could see far across the sea of ice, which seemed to be personally challenging the Oligok crew and testing their strength. A change came over Vincent Oligok as he studied the top of the world. His eyes brightened and color rushed into his face. The great white habitat of the whales and the seals, of the polar bears and walruses, of the gulls and terns, of the eider ducks and of the Eskimos glared at him. The needs of his people stirred his deepest feelings. 2 years without a whale had brought a great unhappiness to the people of Barrow and himself. He must get a whale. Nukik, he whispered, I feel you out here. The boy is here. The time has come. All Vincent's senses turned in on the whale, and he became an instrument to which nature spoke. Listening to the wind, the air pressure, the ice, the water, the sky, he hunched down in his parka, a small owl-like figure on the cold green top of the gigantic iceberg. Cusick and Little Owl were watching from below. They could not take their eyes from him. Utik put down his fishing line. Ernie and Sagnik stopped scraping the polar bear skin, and Tigluk looked up. The scowls on his face unraveled. Lincoln, still on his belly and face down, heard the silence. He rolled over, and as if Vincent had called to him, he looked up. The whaling captain felt the atmospheric pressure and the humidity. He observed the fog and the sundogs, a trail of the frozen mist that makes the sun two glowing suns in the sky. He listened to the ice speak about the wind and current, and the wind and current speak about the whales. After a long time, he came down the wind-carved glacier, picking his way with precision. Nukik, he said to his attentive whalers, is still in the whale puddle where Ware saw him. The ice says no change. We wait. Lincoln Noah, get the orange snow machine in the sled. We are going on a drive. Lincoln picked himself up and promptly hitched his sled to the snow machine, which was in camp. They were not whaling, and silence was not a concern. Bertha piled the sled with furs, and Vincent Oligok climbed aboard. Are you going to Barrowtown? Waldo asked the whaling captain. My office needs me. My boss told Bertha the printer broke down. I can drop you off, Vincent said. Waldo climbed aboard, and Vincent bobbed his head, asking where to come to. The harpooner stepped on the back footboard and held on. A few strands of grizzly hair showed under the beaver skin hat that he wore under his parka hood in the coldest weather. The slits in his wooden sunglasses shone black, and Ware Amagak looked as if he had come from the wolves when the world turned over. No one else asked to come along. They had heard Vincent's silent language of the ice, and the message was that's all. Lincoln had become very aware of this communication system when they were hunting the whale in the Umiak, but as yet he did not understand more than a few simple eye signals. However, when he looked back at Vincent for instructions, he suddenly knew that the elder's eyes were clearly saying, wow, it was raining when I read to you guys yesterday too, were clearly saying, let's go. In the awe of the incredible silence, they talked, and he pulled the starter cord and drove off. He was still puzzling over this language when the electric poles of Barrow came into view. He glanced back. Vincent's eyes did not speak. He drove on. Shortly, they came to a crossroads of orange and green trail markers, and Lincoln stopped for directions. Waldo got off the sled, waved goodbye, and started off on the short trek to Barrow on foot. Lincoln was wondering what to do next when Vincent's silent message came through. "Follow the orange flags," said his eyes and head movements. Lincoln instinctively answered "okay" with eye contact, and he felt he was on a page 1 of a first-grade reader. The orange-flagged trail snaked around huge ice blocks, across open flats, and along the edge of the shore to finally arrive at the radio tower. Vincent signaled, "Stop." "End of the United States, Point Barrow," said Ware, walking up to Lincoln. The wind-packed snow smoothed the landscape so that Lincoln could not tell where the U.S. ended and the ocean began. Searching for some difference, he turned slowly and looked out upon a cluster of enormous whale jawbones, standing like gaunt giants on the bleak tundra. So this is the whale bones. These aren't great pictures, but they leaned toward the north, pointing to the wind that opens the leads. "The graves of ancient whaling captains," Vincent said. "Once there was an Eskimo village here, so long ago even the elders do not remember it." He squinted as if to see into the past and discover where he had come from and who he was. "It is said," he went on, "that this land was once connected to Siberia. That is what our elders teach us, that we came from there hundreds of generations ago. The people who lived here," Ware spoke in his muted tones, "may have been the spirits who came around the bend that my elders talk about. The people who came around the bend lived so far back in time, no one remembers. Maybe the bend they rounded was the land bridge between Alaska and Siberia. I do not know. But I do know the ancient bones mark the graves of whaling captains as they do today. The spirits here were whaling captains." Ware and Vincent lapsed into Inupiat, not to exclude Lincoln, but to talk about a time and happenings for which there were no English words. "Follow the orange markers," Vincent said in English. Half an hour later, Lincoln spotted what seemed to be a wooden matchbox on the sea of ice. I'll show you my dogs, y'all, while I'm reading. I'm going to go down there because it's raining. I don't want to be out there. Okay, half an hour later, Lincoln spotted what seemed to be a wooden matchbox on the sea of ice. As he approached, it grew to be a large packing crate, once used to ship a truck or snow machine to the Arctic. The white men in the Arctic had learned ingenuity and full use of materials from the Eskimos. The shed bristled with as many antennae as a porcupine has quills. "Science camp," he said to himself. "Hot diggity." When he had turned off the noisy engine, he heard whistles and flute-like songs floating out of the shed. Vincent knocked on the door. "Come in," called a cheerful female voice, and the door flew open on a young woman. Barbara Morley's sunburned nose was coated with white sunblock. A round spot of peeling skin from frostbite on her cheek reminded Lincoln that he was in the Arctic. The bite was not unattractive, for it emphasized her bright blue eyes and pretty V-shaped mouth. "Vincent Oligok," she exclaimed. "To what do we owe this honor?" "Hey, Vincent," called a man from the dark rear of the shed. "It's me, Chuck Riley. We met at the mayor's office last month." Professor Riley from MIT was a newcomer to science camp. An acoustics expert, he had been hired to count whales by their voices, which could be heard as far as 10 miles away on underwater hydrophones, even when the leads were closed. The people who tallied the whales by sight could not count when the fog or pack ice closed in, and many whales were not recorded. Chuck was listening to the whistles and trills and adjusting dials on a bank of electronic equipment. The Oligok crew squeezed into the small hut and closed out the bitter cold. Vincent stepped forward and cocked his ear to a speaker, the better to hear the sounds of the sea mammals calling under the ice. Their voices were being picked up by 3 hydrophones and radioed to the shack, where they were taped, printed on sonograph paper, and mapped. "No whales," Vincent said. "None for 2 days," Chuck replied. "You see any?" "All the leads are closed. Very bad ice conditions." "Something has happened," Barbara said. "The migration has stopped." "That is correct," Vincent said. "The hydrophones tell you that?" He seemed pleased. "The ice tells me the current has changed, and pretty soon we shall see whales." "You're a lot more sensitive than our equipment," Chuck said. "Our hydrophones can tell us only that there are no whales making sounds. They could be going by in silence as they regularly do, but our gear cannot say so." Vincent listened to the seals. They seemed very active. He turned to Ware and spoke in Inupiat. "Nukik, you say, is with his granddaughter?" Ware nodded. "It is good," Vincent said. "It is good," Ware agreed in his own tongue, "or he would have gone under the ice with his pod and passed us by. He would have been too far out to find the boy." A low sigh sounded above the trill of the seals, and Vincent took off the beaver hat that he, like Ware, wore under his parka hood on cold days and listened intently. "Pack ice," he said. "Very heavy ice." "Pack ice?" asked Chuck Riley. "Is it coming our way?" Science camp was also forced to move frequently. Vincent did not answer immediately. He was listening to another sound coming over the system. His eyes brightened and he held up his hand. Thump, thump, thump. Hear it? Polar bear. Polar bear walking on the ice. Good instrument to pick up polar bear. Good man to know it's a bear, said Barbara, and flipped on the two-way radio. Castle Perch, this is Acoustics. Do you copy? I copy you, Acoustics. The radio sputtered and crackled so much that the voice on the other end sounded more mechanical than human. We are hearing a polar bear. I repeat, we are hearing a polar bear at hydrophone 2. He is near you. Be on the lookout. Roger, I hear you. A polar bear is near. Thank you, Acoustics. Fog has rolled in. We cannot see far. Over. That's muskox, Barbara said to Lincoln. He's about a half a mile out at one of the 2 perches where the watchers count whales by sight. We count by sound, and together we get some idea of how many there are. I hope muskox doesn't go looking for that bear in the fog. He just might. He's that kind of guy. The tramping of the bear became louder and then began to fade. He's going away out onto the pack ice, Vincent said, and Chuck and Barbara relaxed and turned down the sound. How did a man get a name like muskox? Lincoln asked when the trouble seemed to be over. Muskox are wild cows of the Arctic, big woolly creatures with heads of curled horns, Barbara explained. They take on enemies by gathering in a circle and facing them. We call this Tannic muskox because he faces his enemies and fights head on. Enemies? Who are his enemies? People who don't want the Eskimos to whale. Oh, Lincoln said, and knew that muskox could not be Uncle Jack. He was about to ask Barbara if she knew Jack James, but Chuck turned up the volume to let Vincent hear a beluga whale, and he decided to come back and ask later. The beluga warbled, the seals sang like birds, chirping and trilling as they talked about their territories and their blue-green dens under the ice. They also sang out to say who they were and whether they were hunting. Suddenly, as if all the sea mammals were tired of hearing each other, they stopped burbling. How many whales have you counted this season? Vincent asked Chuck in silence. In 4 days, we heard over 4,000 bowhead vocalizations. Muskox and his crew, who count by sight, saw 50 we did not hear. Putting that all through the computer, we came up with 200 whales passing by Barrow in 4 days. Lots of mactic, Weir said. Remember, mactic is the name for, I think, whale meat. Let's see if that's in there. Yeah, blubber. Lots more whales than we thought, Barbara agreed. Looks like the Eskimo are right. There are quite a few bowhead in the area. Vincent Olagok smiled with satisfaction. It was he who had made the arrangements, egged on by Annie's love of education, for the university-trained scientists to count the bowheads. Although he and Ware and the other whalers knew there were many more than 1,000 or 2,000 bowheads in their area, Vincent had wanted the white man to know it too. Suddenly he bent closer to the receiver and put his hands behind his ears to capture the sound. I hear Seco, he said, the pack ice. Chuck cocked his ear. The low roar? The low roar. Same over the hydrophones as out on the ice. And it says, I am moving. Siku is holding back the second run of whales. There are thousands in that run. The bowhead is returning just in time to save the Eskimo. Thousands in the second run? Barbara asked. Thousands, Vincent repeated. I know this not through hydrophones, but through my long life. I wouldn't have believed you last year, Barbara said. But after Chuck installed the hydrophones this year, we're tracking many whales we cannot see. We're beginning to find out what you have known all along. The whales have made a nice comeback. Not great, but nice. Survival makes the Eskimo the scientists of the North, all right. We have to know these things to stay alive. Vincent's eyes twinkled. Chuck grinned and peered out of the small window at the billowing fog that was now moving in from Castle Perch. You think the pack ice is moving in, Vincent? He sincerely respected the Eskimos' knowledge when it came to interpreting the ice. You have about 6 hours before you have to move, Vincent replied. Suddenly he clutched Lincoln's arm to steady himself. Too hot in here. Take me out. It was not the heat, Lincoln knew, as he and Ware had helped Vincent out the door and through the fog that had rolled in from Castle Perch. The whaling captain's breath was coming in great gasps. I'm getting kind of wet. Lincoln pulled the starter cord, and in his nervousness the engine sputtered and died. In the quiet he heard voices through the thin plywood walls of the shed. Acoustics, this is Castle Perch. Muskox speaking. Do you copy? The voice was still metallic with static. I copy you, Muskox. Go ahead. Thanks for the bear info. It was 40 feet from the cook tent. A rifle blast turned it away. Dangerous situation. Thanks again. Over. Roger. Thank Vincent Olagok. He heard it on the hydrophones. Over. Vincent Olagok? Is he there? Over. He was. Know him? Over. I know him well. I know him very well. He and I did battle once. Over. Well, listen to this, body camp director. Vincent Olagok said Siku, the pack ice, will hit in 6 hours. Over. And then he says a word in Inupiat. What? Over? Get off the ice. Pack up. We're moving now. Over. Roger. Pack up now. At the crossroads, Lincoln stopped to get his bearings and check on Vincent Olagok. I feel pretty good, Vincent said. Better than I have in days. And as if to prove it, he put his boots down and walked to Ware, who was up on the ice mound studying the horizon, which was fogless there. Siku, Vincent said, pointing. The horizon was moving. Building-sized ice blocks were tumbling like cornflakes as the pack ice bulldozed towards land. Not far away, a vast arena of flat ice snapped, rose into a teepee, and crumbled into ice corn. The sound thundered in. Lincoln looked down at his feet, shuddering to realize he was standing on ice that the summer sun was returning to water. Barrow Town was only a dash away. He shot it a worried glance and definitely felt like running there with all his speed. Water sky! Ware lifted both hands toward a thin black cloud rising this side of the buckling horizon. We go to it, Vincent said. We go, Ware asked, while the pack ice is moving? Siku is already moving out. A strong current has reversed its flow. Soon we will feel the change here. The ice will stop crumbling before we get to camp. Vincent put a hand on Ware's shoulder. Newkick is coming, my beloved friend. As they sped back to camp, cracks that had not been there on the trip out festooned the trail like jagged ribbons. At each one, Lincoln checked Vincent's reaction. Apparently he had nothing to say but go to the water sky. They rode up to the tent and stopped. Off the ice, Vincent ordered. No one argued or asked why. Boxes were slammed closed and stowed. The tent fluttered down. Skins were loaded. Snow machines started. To the water sky. Vincent climbed onto Ware's sled and sat down beside Bertha. He took her hand. A whale is coming, he said, and they smiled at each other and knew it was so. To the water sky. Little Owl saw that Vincent and Bertha had taken her spot on Ware's sled, and waving to her Atata, she said, I want to see how to pronounce that one. A-T-A-A-T-A. Atata. Ah, I said that one right. Isn't that nice? And waving to her Atata to say she would not ride with him, jumped onto the seat behind Lincoln. He started off with a jerk, and she grabbed him around the waist. I'll bet I can stay up 22 seconds and hit a bullseye with a lance, he thought as her arms tightened around him. And inspired, he drove up an ice hill, shot off into the air, thumped to the ground, and rushed toward the water sky, a mile long. Ware stopped the caravan to chop a passage through an enormous pressure ridge. Lincoln and Little Owl parked and ran ahead to help. They were walking back to their sled when a cloud of fog came over the ridge and poured down the ice like thick cream. Lincoln could see nothing. Crawl on your hands and knees, Little Owl said. You can see the snow machine tread marks in the ice if you get your face close enough. When they finally found their rig, the others had driven off in the fog. I'm going to wait until this clears, Lincoln said, feeling blindly for the driving handles. Go, Little Owl urged. This is nothing. If we stay here, we are lost. He inched the machine through the pass, stopped, heard the crew ahead, and crept on. At the bottom of another ridge, the fog thinned as he drove up it into sunshine. The Oligok crew was nowhere to be seen, but the great black cloud hung just ahead. Follow the water sky, Ukpik said without even a tremor in her voice. Lincoln eased the machine and slid down the murky ridge. Go right, take that little valley, go left, up to the right. What's that? Lincoln pulled up to a dark object in a drift. A snowmobile lay upside down in the bank. Beside it, a fur-clad figure was clawing with bare hands at the ice. It's Roy, said Little Owl. Lincoln dropped to his knees beside him. Be careful, he looks all druggy. He is mean on drugs. Lincoln managed to turn him onto his back. Roy stared up at him through misty, unseeing eyes. He's badly wasted, Little Owl said. Suddenly she glanced at her feet. The ice is moving, Lincoln. Go. We cannot help him or we die too. Although Siku had crashed into the shore-fast ice a mile from Lincoln and Little Owl, the tremor was only now reaching the spot where they stood. The shockwaves from the collision were powerful and loud. Lincoln thought he had been thrown off the earth and was riding the solar winds. He ran from the machine, heeding Little Owl, then turned back to Roy. Little Owl started the snow machine. Get on, Lincoln. An avalanche of ice blocks was rolling toward them, relentless and unstoppable. Ice chunks bounced up in front of it like ping-pong balls. On it came, and no human hands or machine could halt it. Lincoln grabbed Roy under the armpits and pulled him to his knees. What do you want? Get on the sled, Lincoln ordered. The white man's accent was like a knife in Roy's face. He stumbled to his feet. Tannic, he sneered. Get off the ice. Hear me? He took a wide stance and grabbed Lincoln's throat. White man, I key you all right? Roy's brain seemed to clear when he clutched Lincoln's throat. You take our hunting land. You take our whales. You take our animals. You slowly kill my people. I kill you fast. The fingers tightened. Lincoln tore at their wild strength but could not release them. With a loud grunt, he pounded a fist into Roy's ear. Roy let go. Lincoln dropped to his knees and dove for Roy's legs. He brought him down onto the ice with a thud. Infuriated, Roy pulled his knife. I'll shoot! Little Owl held her gun in Roy's face. Seeing her with Lincoln enraged Roy even more. Get away from her. She is ours. As he reached for his gun, Lincoln struck him under his chin with all his strength, and like a great white polar bear, Roy crumpled to the ground. Thank heavens, said Little Owl. He's out. She put her gun back in the carrying case. Grab his feet, Lincoln said. I'll take his shoulders. We'll throw him on the sled. And tie him there, she added. Lincoln worked fast. The ice avalanche had rolled over Roy's snow machine and was spreading toward them like a river delta, but it had spent its jolt from the pack ice and it slowed down and stopped short of the orange snow machine. As Vincent had said at the crossroads, the pack ice had changed its course. It was going out. The change reached the ridge where Little Al and Lincoln were tying Roy on the sled, and it reached them not 1 minute too soon. "Follow the water, Sky," Little Al said, and climbing on the back seat of the snow machine, she put her arms snugly around Lincoln. And that is the end of chapter 7.